coming out of my cage. I ain't doing just fine.
I think one of my favorite genre of anime when I was younger was harem. I have to say when I was younger because, you know, as an adult with bills to pay, all I can think is, damn, I got my own things to worry about, man. I barely have time to be regular friends with people, much less be in 3 or more situationships, as the kids call them these days. I can't even tell you a good reason why I liked them as much as I did when I was a teenager. Was it the hormones? I'm gonna blame the hormones. That being said, there's a big part of me that still enjoys the idea of them when they're executed in a way that's endearing. You're not gonna catch me always liking things like Yuna and the Haunted Hot Springs, which I would show you, but I'm not going to do that because I read the manga for that, and we ain't going there.
I'm not gonna be doing that.
I feel like it's important to dictate what differentiates a love triangle from a harem, because when it comes to genre and such, it can get confusing. By that I mean if you're the bastard that wrote down the tags for bottom tier character Tomazaki, I want to hang you by jumper cables. A regular romance is between 2 people, fine and dandy. A love triangle is when a third person is involved. The dynamic of romantic interest can look like this, or even this. Now, harem is when a 4th person gets involved, and this is when it gets a bit weird because for the past 20 seconds, I've been trying to avoid talking about gender, but for some reason, harem and reverse harem exist? Because harem is about a male protagonist, and reverse harem is about a female protagonist, and they both center around 3 or more love interests of the opposite gender. For the rest of this video that I already wrote before adding this little insert, I'm not going to make a big distinction. I think adding the reverse part is stupid because it's all about seeing a bunch of pretty people interact with one central person in the first place. Executing a harem story well relies on a lot of factors, chief of which is making the main character, well, you gotta make him somewhat charming. Give him an actual personality based on something, give him a design that works for the story, or one that doesn't and see where it takes you. The women in these stories also have to be good characters. You have to understand why they would be into our main guy. It's not lost on me that the idea of harem anime as it relates to personal taste is all about the concept of being irresistible to many girls or boys, whatever your flavor is. Yes, I like Ouran High School Host Club, I have a heart. Did y'all not see me mention La Cortadoro a few episodes ago? Y'all slacking. One thing that's really easy to do for many people is to put all their stakes into 1 or 2 characters and neglect the rest. And those 1 or 2 characters are usually the girls, not necessarily the man. I recognize I'm switching to a male-centric idea of a harem anime, and you're gonna have to forgive me. That's just what I'm more familiar with and what I'm complaining about. If you have any recommendations for harems with female leads, I'm absolutely all ears. Does Vampire Knight count? Don't look at me like that. I feel like some of the most beloved in the genre across the years that I've been reading manga and watching anime and such are ones that give time for all the characters involved to get to know each other. For some of the characters to recognize that, yes, they have feelings for this one guy, but to ultimately remain as friends because that's the relationship that matters more. I genuinely can't think of many series that do that. I think it's important to show that kind of maturity in any character. One thing I can respect in a small way, but not the entire way, is when the main character definitely knows there's mutual feelings at play with one of the other girls and they play into that, but there's no hard confirmation. I can think of one series that does that. It's Rosario Vampire, and I hate the anime for that series, so I'm not going to show it on screen. Go read the fucking manga! It's that interplay, though, that drives many people to enjoy these series. Even if there's writing on the wall about the ending, a lot of people like to have discourse on which character is perfect for them or the main character. The winner, so to speak. You can root for whoever you want and ultimately be disappointed when the wrong option gets chosen. Yes, I said it! Who, eventually, a writer chooses to go with as the prospective winner in any scenario is ultimately up to them. They're the ones who need to make sure that any audience believes in the relationship up to that point. If it's a sudden realization on who ultimately means the most, was that earned? When it comes to one that I think about a lot, I think of Love Hina. An almost dictionary definition of harem if you ask anyone who watched or read it back in the day. Might not be the best in the business, but I can almost guarantee you it's one that people love at least a little bit. It's written from moment 1 that Keitaro and Naru are going to be together. The story is almost more about how they eventually do it rather than if. A lot of the best romance stories are about the when and not the if, My Dress-Up Darling being one of the best examples in recent memory. The point, however, is that every character in Love Hina needs to become a whole-ass character. Keitaro himself goes on a 2-year trip and becomes the best version of himself, which... Okay, so I didn't watch the anime for this series, I read the manga, so I have no idea what I'm putting on screen right now. Is it the manga or the anime? Fuck, I don't know. I think it's 8 months, not 2 years. Because 2 years is like the One Piece thing. Fuck. That brings up the most important question. Endings. Endings are paramount. A story is only a story once it's ended. You can cry all you want about how a story can be great up until or excluding one part, but there's still a part and parcel of it. The last note of a song, the last stroke of a painting, the last step you take before you enter your apartment after work. How do you end an anime that, for as long as it's ran, built up complex relationships between multiple characters who essentially all want the same thing, and only one person can get that thing? One winner, several losers. How do you make everyone happy? You don't. This isn't talking about a series like Girlfriend, Girlfriend, or The 100 Girlfriends Who Really, 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 Really Love You, where polyamory is the point. Polyamory isn't the solution to every goddamn love triangle or harem series on the planet, guys. Goddamn. One way to do it is by making sure nobody is happy, or implying things go further in places we cannot see. Nobody's hurt, we all have our different opinions on who the best characters are, and then move on because it doesn't ultimately matter. Who cares about writing satisfying character arcs that ultimately end with people being in love? Obviously, it's more important to either not have it happen at all, or have romance happen earlier on in the series so we can experience them being together more throughout the show. Things that are both valid for certain stories, but also not for others. So if it's not blatantly obvious, I am a fan of romantic visual novels and anime based on those visual novels. Yes, I love canon, I kinda tolerate Clannad, I kinda wanna punch Shuffle in the dick with a stick till it's sore, and that was your favorite Martian reference. What I mean by this is that these anime pick one of the character routes and stick to it for quote-unquote official adaptations. Canon sticks to Ayu, Clannad chooses Nagisa, Shuffle chooses Shigure, shit like that. As I'm sure you can tell if you know anything about my tastes, all of these were the wrong choices. Stop fucking looking at me like that! Obviously the point of these anime is to show how all of the candidates for the main character's affection have affection for him. They don't pick one and stick with it because that would require them to not cock tease you for who is actually going to be the one, so they end up playing more like harem anime rather than an animated visual novel with one route of sorts. Maybe that's for pacing reasons, but it's because of the anime taking off wildly in popularity that I can talk about them here. I understand it might be a very biased American perspective, so take what I say with a grain of salt, but ask any anime fan around my age, 28 or so, what they think of Clannad. They're going to hit you with an, "Oh my god, it's so good," and then ask if they're talking about the visual novel. They're more than likely going to say, "There was a visual novel?" Even more likely, they're going to say, "Oh, there was a dating sim?" And I don't have time to get into that. Go watch these 2 videos by Punching Action Button Reviews. After this video, get back here. The reason I bring this up is because I noticed something while running around online. Some anime have made side stories, usually manga, where there was a different character who won, so to speak. The 2 that I think of most prominently, one I can't find anymore, was the Clannad story where Tomoyo was the main heroine, correct, and the other was a Saikano story where Utaha won, also correct. The point is that there is a precedent in things that I've read, again heavily biased, to show off assumedly popular characters being the winners of these sorts of scenarios. Saying winner feels kinda dirty, not gonna lie, but the point stands. I would like to say that it's not uncommon for series with multiple heroines to go off and have official side stories where different girls are the main focus. I think it's really cool that authors and writers, knowing they pit people against each other in the most derogatory way I can say it, waifu wars, they still have the capacity to open the floodgates on what-if scenarios. I think the greater thing is how these stories diverge at some places, deciding to play on the existing character dynamic. In essence, I think that fanworks are really cool. I think it's a fun exercise in creativity to look at something like a series with multiple heroines and work on something that explores how different aspects of a relationship can play out. How a writer uses aspects of that character and furthers it, or resolves it in ways you might not expect or such. To work on something in an official capacity is an even greater honor, I would think. I will fully admit, a lot of my praise for this style is because of the Saikano side story I mentioned that gave love to my favorite character, Utaha. I was on board with how the series played out. I'm not heartless, nor am I so selfish to believe that the writer would decide to hard pivot from the things they made clear from the beginning. I wouldn't sacrifice the great writing in the series just to let my favorite heroine win the proverbial race. I would be hard-pressed to find a series that would do that, nor would I find one that made any attempt at doing something like that. This video is about Bokuben and how the manga ended. So this video contains spoilers for a series near and dear to my heart, but before I get into that, I need to talk about something that this thing does that isn't necessarily new, but it's novel in the way that it does it. If you don't know, allow me to pull a YouTuber and lightly summarize the show. Bokuben, or in English, We Never Learn, or in Japanese, Bokutachi wa benkyou ga dekinai, is about Yuiga Naruyuki, a student who wants to get into a good college so he can support his family and give them a better life. In order to do this, he needs to secure a VIP nomination from his high school, which will be given to him outright if he's able to tutor 2, eventually 3 girls, each of them needing to be taught in the subject they are worst at. Rizu, who wants to get better at literary arts, Fumino, who wants to become good at math, and Uruka, who wants to learn English. There's 2 more characters who are important to the story, but they're not here because it doesn't matter that much if I explain who they are. As you're watching the series, there's one thing that's abundantly clear. Despite the relationships that have been brewing throughout the whole series, one girl's convictions, and said girl's already vested interest in Naruyuki, is going to reach fever pitch and become the true main heroine, winning. The writing on the wall, see what I did there, is that Uruka would become the main heroine. She's already into Naruyuki from childhood, she's great friends with the other 2 girls, she's sporty, which contrasts his bookishness, and they're both earnest to a fault. The fact that she wants to go to a university out of Japan so she can't even be with him once the series ends and they're out of high school, it's bittersweet. You know how it's going to end once you learn the stakes, and that makes it all the more satisfying when you get to the end of the manga and they're both mutually interested in each other at this point. What I think is really neat is how it also ties up one of Naruyuki's original things in the first chapter of the manga. He states he hasn't really had time for anything one would consider pleasurable in his pursuit of the VIP nomination from his school. No friends, no club activities, and absolutely no romance. Throughout the whole series, it's just him becoming closer and closer to every girl, really, but I think the intent from the start was that Uruka was meant to be the final thing. As the manga is wrapping up and Naruyuki has to confront how he's been dealing with his emotions for years, and how he has to reconcile with the version of Uruka that's been in his head and the version that's in front of him, I can't say I haven't been there, in a sense. Maybe I'm just a dense piece of shit that nobody likes, Lord knows, but I loved how it unifies his whole arc. He may not have noticed how he was feeling, but his brain did. Oh! And that's when they do a callback to around the middle of the manga, I want to say. I have to check to make sure, but there's a legend at their high school. Whoever is touching during the first fireworks of the festival will stay connected. Maybe it's the Kingdom Hearts nerd in me, but that reminded me of the Palpu fruit from that game. If you share one, you will remain a part of each other's lives forever. And then they hit you with this. Route 1 out of 5. I'm sorry, what? I beg your pardon?
I beg your...
Yeah, there's 5 endings for the series, and you just got finished reading one of them as chapter 150 ended. What do you even do with that? It kind of feels like the rug got pulled from under you, doesn't it? Like, you take 3 years of storytelling, nearly 3 years of storytelling, and say, nah, what if there's actually more to it? This isn't even the real one. And that's what I would say if I didn't understand why it's here. You spend 150 chapters getting to know all of these characters, and you understand all of their motivations, their needs, and their wants, and you understand that due to the nature of the story you're reading, if you're genre savvy like I am, that this is all going to come to an end. One of these relationships is going to prevail, and you just want to get to the point where everyone realizes what's going on, and you see where things go. So why is it that I love this approach so much? Is it because I get to see my favorite characters fulfill their aspirations? Maybe. But there's more here that I don't think can be properly stated. But I'm going to try. I think one of my main reasons for liking it is just that, upon reread, there is a definitive timeline for when things are going to diverge. Like, it's stated many times that Naruyuki doesn't have time to think about anything except his studies until exams are over. The finals, so to speak, on top of making sure that they get into college in the first place. That's important. So important that every character puts whatever feelings they have on pause until then, which wraps up into just about everyone's character before their individual ending. It's this idea that they don't pursue the thing they actually want out of what they see as respect for the other person. They go, oh, it's fine for now because there's stuff that matters more to these people, and that coming from every character, while maybe a bit heavy-handed in hindsight, kinda hits closer to home than I would expect. I mean, I've been learning to be more direct about things rather than just waiting for the perfect moment, because the perfect moment may never come naturally. Sometimes you gotta create it. In a weird way, I think it's like spending money on things I like, or holding onto stickers. Like, sure, I can wait for the perfect place to slap a sticker, but my Switch 1 dock has never looked so cool. In that same way, I think it's great to see the little inklings of romance pop up throughout the series as these characters try to create moments. It's them acting on their feelings rather than things happening to them, though things absolutely happen to them as a force of storytelling rather than being driven by the characters. I like both things, is what I'm saying. It's really cool how the fireworks scene in the manga is where the timelines diverge, essentially. I do feel a bit sad that the Uruka confession is shunted in favor of the other girls, since I think it's important for her character to make that choice to tell Nariyuki how she feels in all of this. But as I was rereading the manga and writing this video, I came to a realization. That's the point, isn't it? That the other characters, even while in their potential ideal circumstances, don't get to finish what they started. I appreciate that from a storytelling standpoint, because as a whole, I get to see how every character finishes what they started, while also having the context of how things play out differently, how Nariyuki touches their lives and beyond the context of high school. There's something novel in a writer realizing that they created a narrative that involves many people. Why not show off how they each play out rather than trying to condense it into one narrative? I feel like another reason I like this so much is that none of the endings, or routes I should call them, are treated as the canonical one. All 5 of them have their merits, and viewers are encouraged to pick whichever one they like the most. I certainly have. In contrast, I think about the ending to a series like Smile Down the Runway, where they kind of don't do anything. If you know, you know. You probably don't, but that's okay. I think what separates this kind of story from, like, a romantic visual novel that gets turned into a harem anime, like Shuffle or Clannad or Canon, is that I was subverted by there being more in an official capacity, and not just having to swallow my pride and accept where the writing led to. I almost wish most manga like this could do it, but I understand why it's not common. If it's more common than I'm letting on, please let me know in the comments. Tell me your favorite harem heroine as well, and what she's from. I love hearing about this kind of stuff, I promise. Though, saying this stuff out loud makes me feel like an absolute degenerate. I thought I told you to stop fucking looking at me like that! To answer the question I posed in the title because I'm me, I don't think I have an answer. The internet at large, and by that I mean like 4 loud people, say that polyamory is the answer, and I don't think that always works, not in these kinds of stories. Not to say it can't, 100 Girlfriends is one of my favorite pieces of work in the past 5 years, but it's to say that you have to know exactly what you're doing and go in understanding several character dynamics and how they're going to play out. 100 Girlfriends does this by starting with the main character asking out 2 women at the same time, and their family growing from there. A lesser example, in quality based off of my very limited reading, was Girlfriend Girlfriend, or Kanojo Kanojo to say it like a weeb. They had 2 of the principal cast already be in a relationship and add onto it during the first part of the story, so it's clear what the whole thing was going to be about. Not to say it can't be done, but I think it's infinitely harder to write a story like Bokuben and then go, right at the end, yeah, let's just make everyone happy by letting them all date the main guy. Like, I don't think that's always the solution. Again, if you're good enough, maybe you can make it work, but how can you look at characters that have clear defined wants and needs and arcs and just say that the solution is all so easy? Polyamorous relationships aren't easy, man. I have several friends who make it work, but it's not for everyone. God, where am I even going with this? If you're looking for a recommendation, albeit one that's spoiled for you, I think the ride is easier knowing that every character gets their own shot at happiness with Nariyuki. It's easier to swallow where the characters go and how they change, and even little breaks for dumb fan service moments like seeing a character wear their old high school uniform. I think it makes for a breezy reading experience. Or watching experience, but I do think the anime loses out on a lot of the texture that's brought to the table from the written page. Granted, this sequence is really funny and still widely used today. Maybe you'll find 4 more endings to this video somewhere, I'm not sure. With all of that said, my name is Sonata. Thank you for watching.
Don't give up. Challenge again.